Hello and welcome back to Your Dog's Not Broken.
And neither are you.
It is the podcast, in case you've missed previous episodes, where we don't try and fix your dog or try and fix you. But what we do is pull back some layers to reveal why your dog is doing some of the crazy things that they're doing and help you live a little bit happier together.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about dog training. It's about understanding and getting to the heart of the issue so that you can solve problems at their source.
Yes, exactly. So we've been asking for your messages about your messy situations or your questions, and we have a lovely caller today. Do you want to hear?
Yep.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey ladies, Meredith here. So we have two female corgis, ages 7 and 5, and we're about to welcome a new 8-week-old corgi puppy, Phineas, a little brother into the family. And it's been about 2.5 years since our older brother passed away. So this will bring us back to having 3 corgis in the house again. And even though we're experienced corgi parents and we feel like we have everything ready, I'm still a little nervous about how my girls will adjust. So my question is, what considerations should I keep in mind to ensure all 3 acclimate to the change and are set up for success?
Oh, I love
Mm.
callers like this. She's being so mindful about that introduction, making sure that her older dogs are being taken care of and that it goes as well for the puppy as it possibly can. I mean, we don't know how this is going to go down. Even as professionals, when
Yeah.
we bring a new dog into our house, we just don't have a clue, do we?
No, but it's actually like way more complicated than we give dogs credit for. And then if we can actually put ourselves in their shoes, we might find that there's a lot that we could relate to about just how stressful and uncomfortable this can be at first.
So when we get a new dog, we think we're doing something really normal. We're just adding a puppy to our family. We might want a companion for our dog. But actually, ethologically, that's a little bit unnatural, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely can be. So, like in the case of, say, a puppy, right? Bringing a puppy into the house, like if they weren't in these captive kind of pet situations that most of us are, living in with our dogs, that where we're making all those kinds of decisions for them, and they're not living kind of naturally and freely in an environment as they are like in 80% of the world, right? Where we have all these free roaming village dogs. Then, like if it's a
That, by the
baby,
way, I'm going to ding you. I'm going to ding you, not
okay,
because you said a big scary word, but how crazy. We need to just spend a moment here that
yeah,
80% of the world's dogs
yeah.
don't live in homes like ours.
I know. I remember when I
80%.
first learned that, like, from Ray Coppinger, almost 20 years ago now, I was like, I didn't know that, right? Here I am raised in the United States, and I think all dogs are just as we know them as pets. And then you find out that actually 80% of the dogs on the planet aren't living as pets. So for the, free roaming village dogs and stuff that are living that way, like, we think, oh, that's weird. We should go rescue those dogs and everything. But actually, they are in their natural habitat, if you will, right? So, that's a whole other podcast episode, right?
Yes.
But so if about a puppy, it would be like, okay, well, the female would be in estrus, and then the female would be pregnant, and there'd be all these smells that the animals would know about, like, oh, that female is going to be having puppies, and then they have puppies, and they're there from the beginning, obviously, and then she raises them, and the other social members that are maybe around are getting used to all that gradually, not like, oh my gosh, suddenly there's an 8-week old puppy around, right? Like,
Like the stork for
right, the
coming in and
stork.
just dropping.
Exactly, exactly,
Yes,
and
no
so,
stork.
like, there and then if it was an adult dog we were bringing in, like, from a more natural perspective, they would be meeting that individual and deciding whether they like them, do they have chemistry, do they, have conflicts, is it more gonna be a social competitor, is it more likely that this is gonna be, like, a social ally and companion and friend, and so when we actually put everybody into the house suddenly with this stork concept. It's more like those reality TV houses. Remember those back in the day, like the original ones? The experiment was kind of you
Yeah.
throw a bunch of strangers in a house.
Yeah, like Big Brother.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that doesn't always
Crazy.
go down drama free, right? In those reality TV houses.
No.
And so it can be the same thing for our dogs if we just kind of throw everyone in and then see what happens. So it's really important that we're sensitive and mindful, like the caller is trying to be about like, how can we set this up so that everybody's the most comfortable?
Yeah, and that is definitely not, I think, what we might consider when we bring a new puppy home. So I was trying to imagine what we could kind of visualize to help us put ourselves in our dog's paws for something like that happening. And the closest I could come up with was imagine you're 10 years old, Close your eyes, imagine it. Got that picture? Okay, now your parents rock up and they say, guess what? Surprise! We've adopted a new kid and they're joining our family. How would you feel? I mean, there are a million different emotions that might be surging through your body. It might be the best day of your life. You might have always wanted a sibling, or it might be the worst. You might not want to share your parents or your other siblings with this new intruder.
Thinking about that, like, it would be as if your parents were like, "Yeah, so we're gonna get a new sibling," and you're like, "Okay," and they're like, "And they're in the car." Like,
Yeah,
just the sudden, like, "Oh my gosh, that's so big," and I don't know what to think about that, and then, they bring them in and they're attending to this new individual. You might feel threatened and jealous of the attention that they're getting from your parents. You might feel threatened and jealous about, like, what if they get along with my sibling really well, and then my sibling and I aren't as close anymore? Like, there's so many
right.
different ways that that could go, and if they're like a baby, like, if you are, say, 10, 12 years old or something like that, and your parents bring in a baby, you might really feel weird about that baby, as that baby is kind of annoying you and wanting your attention and taking your stuff and breaking things, and so all of those kinds of experiences are things that our older dogs can have too when we are, like, introducing randomly this puppy into their life. A lot of that can be very anxiety provoking, and I think it's really important that we do keep that stuff in mind, because we shouldn't have the expectation that it's just gonna go smooth as butter.
Yeah, and the caller, Meredith, said that she has two corgis and she's introducing another corgi. So this kind of fits into that ethological spin that the dogs would all have some similar genetic makeup. So they might look pretty similar or be speaking the same language. But to put ourselves back in the dog's shoes again, what if now the baby that your parents have got in the car that they're bringing in this afternoon at 1 o'clock, what if they don't speak the same language as you? What if they don't like the same things that you like? They've got a completely different pace of life, or maybe they're really shy and you're really outgoing, or the other way around. They're really outgoing and you're really shy. Like, there's so many different considerations, aren't there, to think about how that might feel for the
Well,
OGs that are at home.
absolutely, because, like, so in her example, right, she's got a couple corgis, and for anyone who's never really spent a lot of time around corgis, okay, they're a herding dog, and maybe they're kind of like a mellow herding dog relative to some other herding dogs, but these dogs are still very much belonging to the herding dog category, which means they tend to be hypervigilant, very aware of everything in the environment, a little bit type A, a little bit controlling of the behavior of others, because all of that is right up the alley of what herding dogs were bred for. So let's say we brought in a bumbling, overexcited Weimaraner puppy or something like that, and
Right.
just without having that sense of, like, maybe the boundaries that are important to the herding dogs, may just be kind of a type B personality that's just impulsive and a little excitable and not necessarily as aware of the landscape of, the law and order that the corgis have spent years establishing
Exactly.
in the house.
So
And then we
it's
can have, like, huge personality conflicts there, not because anyone's doing anything wrong, but they are speaking a different language. They have a different sense of where the lines are, what's important to them, etc. Does that mean it's necessarily going to go terrible? No, but it just means we want to keep those things in mind. So if the corgis get a little grumpy about the situation, we can add in our little bit of extra understanding there as far as the compatibility factor too.
Yeah, and that probably happens in multiple households, I would think, that people have one kind of a dog and then they change breeds and they want to get something different. They're not always the same breeds. And that's not to say that all individuals act the same within a breed. Obviously, we know that. So, like, if I got another working cocker, that does not mean that they're necessarily speaking exactly the same language. But there's going to be a higher chance of them understanding each other's signals than a completely different breed, even with like different shaped ears, different shaped tail. If you can't see the tail moving or you can't see the ears moving, that's a really huge thing for dogs. The body language signals are such an important tip off to how a dog might be feeling. And if you don't have that, that's a tricky place to start.
Yeah, you can just have some communication breakdowns on top of the challenge and the
Yeah.
stress of the whole situation and all the newness and all the disruption to routines and, things like that as well. So, it's any change, right? Like, anytime we have these huge changes in our lives, like, I do think it's important for us to think that, like, we have the benefit of knowing I'm starting a new job. I can anticipate and, like, address my anxiety about the change by kind of predicting what is that going to look like, right? I can anticipate the plan changes in my schedule and lifestyle, et cetera. But when we move, when we have a new job, when we bring a new social animal or person into that social group in our homes, all of those things can be huge changes that are really difficult for our dogs to adjust to. And they don't have the benefit of being able to anticipate that. They don't know what it means. They don't know whether that new schedule is something that's going to stick or it's just temporary. They don't know whether we're staying in the new house or we're just on vacation to a new Airbnb, right? So, just giving them the benefit of the doubt of how much they're in the dark and how much that lack of predictability facilitates anxiety can be so helpful in terms of compassionately and practically approaching these kinds of life changes when it comes to our dogs.
Yeah, and how long that puppy might be staying for. Are
Right.
they just coming for the afternoon or are they going home?
Do you know what's funny about that? So I used to always like I could see it in my own dogs and then I would see it in my clients' dogs and in all these cases when they would be introducing new dogs to the household. There's this tipping point, right? Where like if you've say had dogs over to visit and stay for the holidays or something like there's this first phase where the dogs are like, "Okay, cool. So like we have friends over." And then there's this tipping point where they're like, "They're not leaving.
Exactly.
They're staying. They moved in. This
What,
is a
like,
permanent situation."
forever?
I
Yeah.
know.
Not that their parents just gone on vacation and then they're
Right.
gonna come back and pick them up?
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
It's a lot to ask,
Yeah,
and
so
then, they get stuck in those, reactive kind of responses to, like, trying to control the situation and the change, and so I think that's one of the biggest things I would want people just to think about, is that you have to step up and be the parent. We've talked about that in previous episodes, right? Like, you can think of this like you're the upper manager, or you can think of it like you are the parent, but you have to be responsible and control the environment, control the situation, so that the dogs don't have to just wing it and figure it all out on their own because it is really unnatural, right? So we need to set them up for success by really strategically thinking about how we can control the scene.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about that stuff in the parenting episode, and I think that we can draw a really, really bold line between imagine yourself being that 12-year-old kid and your parents have adopted a new 6-year-old, and now it's your job just to raise them.
Yep.
It's just not fair, and it's not safe. So, talking about parenting, and we've discussed meeting their needs, I think it would really help to unpack some of the things that we would want to be mindful about that as their parents we should be looking at. So one of the first things for me is always safety. So we want to be protecting the safety of the OG, the original dogs that are in the house. So if they are a little bit older or they're a little bit more fragile, her dogs are 5 and 7, so they are prime of their life. So they're probably not fragile at this point at all. But if you have an older, more senior dog, you really want to make sure that that dog's taken care of. I know when I got juiced, my other dog, Canby, was like, she was 15. And that took a lot of separating them and keeping them apart to make sure that she felt comfortable because he was a really, really busy puppy and she was, really slowing down and she needed that space. And also then you want to make sure that the puppy is taken care of and they're protected because if the older dogs are a little bit grumpy or they're not really down for the shenanigans of the puppies pulling, we don't want their over exuberance. It could be their size or it could just be the fact that they've just done with the puppy for the night. We don't want the puppy to be spooked or scared. So we have to make sure that we're caring for the younger dog safety as well.
Yeah, and the puppies just left a litter, remember? So they had all of these,
Yeah.
friends that they could be bruising with when they had their spunky little moments and the witching hours of the morning and the evening and everything else. So they didn't have to just think about how to navigate that with mom or other adults, right? Those social dynamics of those developing puppies like would actually have those litter mates together longer than we traditionally keep them when we're getting a new puppy. And so they would have the benefit of those playmates. And so you're basically putting them in a situation where they've lost that. So the puppy could get a lot more frustrated and be like, where am I supposed to put all this roughhousing energy if it's not on our ankles, right? Like, then where do we put that? So actually, this is another case
The
where
Carl hack.
Carl could be really helpful. Exactly.
Exactly. Get yourself a stuffed
Yep.
dog.
And
It's the
right.
answer to a lot of.
to remind everybody else about that, if you didn't already hear that episode, life-size stuffed dog, and it can be incredibly helpful. You can get them on Amazon, and I actually have someone working on a Cordura version of one, so it'll be way hardier than the ones that are on Amazon right now. So that's in the works. But yeah, so Carl can be super helpful. Even when you have other dogs in the house, it gives the puppy someone else to attack, harass, provoke,
Yeah.
kind of go through the motions of getting all that fun wrestling and biting out of their system. But yeah, like you're saying, safety is so important. So separation, using baby gates, using X pens, separation by rooms. And if you are going to have them together after that first initial stage where you've had some separation, you're going to try having them actually in the same room, even if it's going perfectly, short and sweet. Right? Short and sweet. That's enough. Take another break just to make sure no one starts getting on anyone else's nerves before they have some kind of relationship dynamics established and some agreements.
And that's tempting, isn't it? Sometimes when they are getting along really well, you do want to leave them a little bit longer. You're like, oh, this is a great moment. And most of us get dogs to see those great moments with our existing dog and a new puppy. But you're so right. You don't want it to just dip into something that isn't good for either of them. And that the safety piece, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but it is so important because it's building the trust in the relationship, isn't it? So this is what we want to do. We want to make the puppy feel like the older dogs are really trustworthy and great and safe and wonderful to be around. And we want the older dogs to believe that the puppy is safe as well. And really, I think the way to achieve that is to make sure that they definitely have their own space and that we are moving at a pace that is comfortable for both of them.
Yep, absolutely. And keeping high value things that are really important to especially the older dogs at first, like up and put away. So guys, that's not just food bowls and high value bones, but it could be a favorite toy. It could be a favorite sleeping space on the couch. It could be you. Right. And so, depending on the dog, you have to think about like what is most important to them and what are they most likely to potentially guard from the puppy to establish those boundaries. All of those kinds of subtle communications about like, hey, these are my rules, these things are important to me. And then the ritualized communication. So maybe I'm raising a lip or growling or doing a little bark or a freeze or something like that, that your older dog might be doing. That's normal and healthy, but also we don't want to put them in the situation where they're having to do a lot of that, especially at the beginning when we want them to be getting off on the right foot. So make sure you're really mindful about space and things like that. And you're being aware of when something is getting on your older dog's nerves. You want to make sure you're parenting that situation so that it's not a problem for everybody.
Yeah, it'd be like that new kid coming into the family and like just rummaging through your closet and taking your clothes and wearing them out. You'd be like, what are you doing? Hello?
I know.
Or eating the snacks that you had for your lunch. Even if you're tolerating it and you're not going to go and attack the puppy or the sibling, it doesn't set up a very good start for the relationship or a friendship, does it? It's not the way you want things to begin.
No, and we just tend to be like, just share, be nice with the older dogs. And like
Yeah.
it's a really tall ask, guys. It's a really tall ask. So like
I would be a massive resource guarder, by the
I
way,
would
with a
too.
younger sibling.
And
Actually,
and
with
I
an older sibling.
you know me and
Get off
my
my
little,
stuff.
like, routines and stuff, right? Like, I mean, I would be very rigid about, like, "Do not mess up my routines. This is what I do every morning at this time. This is what I do every evening at this time." And so, keeping that in mind too and trying to maintain those patterns and routines for the OG dogs while you're getting the puppy established and into the rhythm of the thing that you already have set in your home.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind sharing with people, but I want stuff going back where it was.
Right.
That's where I become a massive resource guarder. Yes, you want to use my scissors, that's fine. Just put them back in the drawer.
Right, right.
So ridiculous. So the other thing that we can protect, so we can protect their safety, we're protecting their spaces, and we are protecting their routines.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those OG dogs will have routines. You will have certain things that you do with them every day that they enjoy, and that's their like thing to hang their hat on for the day. And the puppy is most likely going to have a very different routine. If you don't know this already, puppies need a boatload of sleep, just like babies do. And we have to set that up for them so that they can have really great sleep, so that they can show up as their best selves and they can, be nice to the OG dogs and everything goes a little bit more swimmingly. So that might mean that you let the puppy have a nap and you take the OG dogs out somewhere, because being by themselves for a little bit is also really healthy. I think there's a tendency for us to just always to want to move as a pack. I've noticed, just as a sidebar, that since I've moved to the UK, my dog Juice now really is having a much harder time being left by himself without the company of the other dog. And I just didn't really put any weight into that because I always assumed that they would always be together. But now, we're both paying the price for that because I've got to make him feel more comfortable around that. But I think that often we don't think about that with puppies, do we? That they need their own time.
Yeah, and the time passes so quickly in those first few months that often it just kind of catches up with us and we just haven't done it yet. But at some point, they're going to need to be able to be alone, whether that's even an emergency situation or just something as
Yep.
far as like, one dog can go someplace with you and another one can't for whatever reason. I think it's good for everybody if you still spend one-on-one time with your original dog or dogs, and it's also really good for the puppy for you to be taking them out to do things
Yep.
just one-on-one for socialization without necessarily having the backup of the older dog with them and whatnot. And then for both of them to practice still being left at home alone without the other, because again, it will at some point happen.
Yep. So one of the things that the caller talked about was making sure that this was a great first impression. And I think that this is a huge point. We know this even as humans, that you can meet somebody, and if your first take on them is that they are fill in the blank, that rubbed you the wrong way, it takes a little while for you to undo that impression of them, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
It does. And they say don't judge a book by its cover, but we do. We can't help ourselves but do that. So I think when we're introducing a new dog into the situation, we do really have to try to protect the first impression and try to make it go as smoothly as possible. And so we've been unpacking all of this to help you understand what might be going on for your dogs and what you can potentially do as their parents. But we have great friends and amazing dog professionals that have written this fantastic book that is going to really hold your hand and walk you through the process of introducing a puppy into a house that already has OG dogs. And it's called Old Dog, New Dog. And it's by Kathy Callahan and Helen St. Pierre. And it's a brand new book, isn't it? But it's amazing.
Oh, it's fantastic, and I'm a little biased because I wrote the foreword for it, but I read that book in an afternoon on my porch on a beautiful fall day, and it brought tears to my eyes because it was so warm and relatable and compassionate, and it's so practical. It is such a fabulous guide that covers all of these kinds of things that we've been talking about today in a much more thorough nature than we have time to cover in a podcast episode. But I would highly suggest that everybody picks up a copy of that if they're going to be introducing a new puppy to their house at any time.
Yes, they're fantastic people and really, really good at what they do. So if you're looking for a book, this is the one, hands down. And we will leave all of that information in the show notes where you can get the book, and a little message from Kathy and Helen as well.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hack time.
Yes, yes. So I've got one that I've used personally when I have introduced new puppies or dogs to the house, and I've used it with my clients over the years a lot too. And it's called the assigned seating hack. And the idea with this is that, especially in these moments, like when we're sitting in the family room and watching TV, or we're going to be like going to bed at night or something like that, and we leash both dogs to kind of opposite sides of the seating area so that they can't reach each other and interact. And we set them up with a nice bed, a little bowl of water, maybe some lowish value, something to chew on or play with, nothing that's going to kind of raise the resource guarding possible hackles and whatnot. And we just sit down and we're modeling, this is what we do. We sit down and watch TV in the evenings, or we sit down and read a book in the evenings, and we're all just hanging out together so that we're normalizing that, and they don't have to make any decisions about anything. So there's really nothing for them to try to figure out or navigate with each other. We're modeling, we're controlling the situation, and we're going to make it a nice pattern that we do every single day to help them learn how to be in the same room together without having all those anxiety provoking questions of what's going to happen next.
Not only is it great for the dogs, I always like to think when you get a new dog or you introduce a new dog to your house, that you want to visualize what you want your life to be like in a couple of years, what you want that lovely, perfect life to be, and then kind of back into it. And this hack does exactly that. You get to experience, what it might be like to sit down and watch TV, and everybody's just harmonious. It's not only great for the dogs because they learn this, but it's also great for us because we can take the pressure off ourselves as well. Otherwise, you're always running around trying to make sure that everything's okay. And if you've got a puppy, it's busy, very, very busy. The 2-leash assigned seating hack, I think, is amazing for older dogs or dogs that don't like to be in a crate. But if you have a really busy puppy, you might want to use a crate or a baby gate for this, or an X pen, so that they can be in the same room as you, but they're not flipping and bucking on the leash, especially when they're really young. Sometimes the feeling of having a collar around their neck or a leash can feel very unnatural, where it
Absolutely.
wouldn't be if just behind a gate. You can put a
That's
nice
a
bed in there.
really good point. And so oftentimes with young puppies, it's much better to use an X pen in the room for the puppy and then use a
Yeah,
leash for the older dog. Um, Absolutely, you want to make sure that whoever is being leashed is already comfortable with a leash. Like, we don't want
right.
their introduction to being on a leash to be in the assigned seat situation. That would be bad.
Not
That's
relaxing for
No, no,
anybody.
no. Right, exactly. That's a whole other skill set that you want the puppy to learn elsewhere. But you really said it, Justine, because I would always say to my clients, one of the best things about the assigned seat hack is that you actually relax. And if you think about it, now that we know, by the way, that dogs literally can synchronize their nervous systems with their families. I'm having a bad mood or, just kind of a stressful week or whatever. My dog might completely dial into that and be very much affected by it. So when we're running around trying to navigate everything and control the situation, we're hypervigilant. And so everything about our nervous systems, our mood, our excitability is
Yep.
going to be more aroused. And so it's better to put ourselves in a situation where we actually can breathe, knowing both of them are tethered, everything's under control. We're literally then just watching TV instead of being paranoid about what's going to happen. And that really helps set everybody up for success, not just the dogs, but for you too.
Absolutely. And you need it. You need it. By the end of the day, you are going to be tired. It's a lot to manage, not just the puppy, but existing dogs as well. You've got your hands full.
Yep.
And a shameless plug, actually, if you don't know the secrets to parenting and how to create on and off time for yourself, check out the dial method as well, because it's all explained in there. And the video is only 40 minutes long and it's animated, so it's a really easy watch. And it goes through this really important piece about on versus off time, which is not only really healthy for us, but also for our dogs as well, claiming some space and a little bit of downtime for yourself. So it is post-it pivot time. We've reached that moment at the end of the show where you think of one small change that you would like to make, considering everything that we've talked about today, and you write it on a post-it note, stick it on your fridge, and see how it changes life with your dog. So just to go back over some of the points that we discussed today about introducing a new dog, first of all, we would want to put ourselves in the shoes of our existing dogs to imagine what it might feel like. Also, we want to put ourselves in the shoes or the paws of the new puppy that's coming into the house as well, or the new dog. What might it feel like for them? Then, most importantly, we want to meet all of our dogs' needs. So we want to protect the safety of all of the dogs involved. And that might mean having 2 people involved to make sure that everybody's taken care of. We want to create safe spaces for both of them as well. So this is an area where the puppy could go to rest, and also where the OG, the original gangster dogs, can go and have some time out too. We want to also protect the routines of the original dogs, right? We don't want them to feel like their life has been turned upside down. And sleep is really, really important for puppies. They do a lot of it, and they are so much nicer when they've had a good nap, just like children. So we want to protect that time for them too. And lastly, and probably most importantly, we need to reset our expectations about adult dogs not being babysitters for puppies. It's not fair on them, and it's also not really responsible. So if we want to get a new dog, we have to be the person who's going to step up to the plate and make sure that not only the new dog's needs are met, but also our existing dogs too, and give them a break, because it is exhausting looking after little kids sometimes. And I was talking to one of my friends, Debbie. She came to stay with me, and she was like, I've been listening to your Post-it Pivot, and sometimes you don't have a Post-it note when you're listening to the podcast because we're driving or we're walking or whatever. So say your Post-it Pivot out loud right now. Say it out loud, because that will bring it into reality for you. So one, say it out loud. And then secondly, I'm going to ask if you'll also write it in the comments wherever you're listening to the podcast. We want to know what your Post-it Pivot is, right?
Yep.
I don't know that we need one for this week, do we? Because we're not introducing a new puppy.
No. I just think for me as a life Post-it pivot, which also relates to our topic this week, it could be Kim's slow and steady wins the race. Just that whole idea of not trying to do everything immediately.
Yeah, that falls in line with my favorite line that I like to say to myself when raising a new dog, which is stay the course.
Yeah.
When you know what you're supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
just stay the course and keep doing it, because you don't always see the payoff immediately.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's the end of this episode. If you liked it, or you know somebody who could really use this kind of help, then please share, comment, subscribe, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. No, we'll see you again next Tuesday. Remember, your dog's not broken. I am.
Justine and I might be, but neither are you.